In 2015, actress Kimiko opened a residual check from Netflix that looked like a clerical error. She had appeared in over 40 episodes of Orange is the New Black, which was one of the most watched original series the platform had ever produced. Despite the massive global success of the show, that check was for exactly $27.30. The studio system has never been dismantled. It has only been rebranded. The reality was that this wasn't a mistake at all. It was the intended result of a system that has been operating for nearly a century. The real question isn't why it happened to one actress, but how Hollywood designed a legal and financial structure where this outcome is possible for almost anyone. Join us as we uncover the hidden mechanics of the studio system. To understand how the industry eventually abandons its stars, you have to go back to the moment the studios first realized they could get away with it. By the mid-1930s, Shirley Temple had become the most bankable performer in Hollywood. At only 6 years old, she was generating tens of millions of dollars for 20th Century Fox. And her films didn't just perform well, they actually kept the company from collapsing. Even with that level of success, the contract governing her career gave her family almost no leverage over how her earnings were managed. This wasn't some predatory outlier, but rather a standard practice across the industry. The studio contract functioned as a control instrument instead of a fair agreement between two parties. Under these terms, studios held exclusive rights to their talent and could loan actors out to other companies without their consent. If an actor refused a role, the studio could suspend them without pay and tack that time onto the end of the contract, which extended their obligation indefinitely. An actor's career, their image, and even their private life were treated as company property. The financial logic followed the same principle. Talent was paid for the immediate labor of production, but they were never paid for what that production eventually became. All residual value from reruns, licensing, and distribution flowed back to the studio because the performer had already been paid for their time. Jackie Coogan earned the equivalent of millions for MGM as a child star and was left with almost nothing by the time he turned 18. The Coogan Law of 1939 was eventually passed because child stars like Jackie Coogan earned millions for studios, only to enter adulthood with nothing. While this was a significant development, the original version was riddled with loopholes for decades. The deeper reality was that the system was never just about money, but about total ownership. When a star lost their draw, the studio simply moved on. This wasn't a side effect of the system, but a design feature the television industry would eventually inherit. When network television first arrived, it appeared to offer a much more equitable model than the old studio system. Actors finally had the protection of a unified union through sag-aftra, which meant they were no longer at the total mercy of a single employer. These new contracts included residual structures, allowing a performer in a hit series to theoretically keep earning from their work long after the cameras stopped rolling. The reality was far less reliable than the theory. Consider a massive success like How I Met Your Mother, which ran for 9 seasons on CBS and generated an enormous syndication deal. By every available metric, the show was a financial triumph for the network, the producers, and the top-billed stars who led the cast. However, the rewards of that success were distributed along a hierarchy so steep that for supporting players, the promised windfall remained largely abstract. To understand why the money rarely reached the ensemble, we have to look at how residual payments actually function in practice. Under the standard sag-aftra minimums, these payments decrease every time an episode reruns until the 13th airing. At that point, the check stabilizes at just 5% of the actor's original fee, and it stays at that tiny fraction indefinitely. For a performer who started at the lower end of the pay scale, 5% of their check isn't a safety net, but rather a rounding error that barely covers the cost of postage. The cast of The Big Bang Theory sat on one of the most profitable shows in television history, but only 3 of them ever saw a fraction of what it was actually worth. The Big Bang Theory provides a perfect illustration of how the same hit show can create 2 fundamentally different financial worlds for its cast. While the 3 lead stars eventually used their leverage to negotiate million-dollar salaries and back-end participation, the expanded ensemble faced a much different set of rules. Many of these actors joined the show later or lacked the initial power to demand a piece of the profits, meaning they worked on the same global phenomenon without ever sharing in the same life-changing wealth. Studios often control these costs using a common ensemble clause known as a favored nations agreement. While the name suggests a sense of fairness and equality, the language actually functions as a rigid ceiling that standardizes pay at the lowest possible level. This mechanism prevents any single actor from negotiating a higher rate without the studio having to raise pay for the entire cast, so it is presented as a tool for parity when it is actually a tool for containment. This tension eventually led the cast of The Walking Dead to pursue litigation against AMC over back-end profits they believed were contractually owed to them. The resulting dispute pulled back the curtain on a technical world the industry prefers to keep opaque, revealing that studios define profit in ways that ensure it almost never materializes for the talent. In the eyes of the law, revenue is a real number, but profit, as written into a Hollywood contract, is often nothing more than a term of art. The pattern here is remarkably consistent across the decades. Contracts are designed to compensate talent for the physical act of production, but they are almost never designed to reward them for the long-term act of success. Because the back end is structured to be unreachable, and residuals are built to decay over time, the house always wins. Network television at least provided a union-protected floor for performers, but the arrival of streaming would soon remove that floor entirely. If this forensic look at the hidden mechanics of the industry is the kind of research you want to see more of, subscribing now ensures you won't miss our next investigation. This archive goes deep into the history of power, and we are just getting started. Orange is the New Black ran for 7 seasons on Netflix and earned 91 Emmy nominations, proving to the world that the streaming model was a viable path for prestige television. It wasn't just a popular show that audiences talked about and returned to year after year, but a vital proof of concept for an entirely new distribution paradigm. The series changed the way we consume media, yet the financial reality for the people on screen told a very different story. Studios found a legal mechanism to erase their residual debts entirely, and most actors never even knew it was happening. When the show was at its peak, actress Kimiko received a residual check for exactly $27.30. The structural reason for that insulting number is not as complicated as the industry would like you to believe. Before the 2023 negotiations, streaming residuals were calculated using fixed rates tied to subscriber counts and the length of an episode. These payments had no relationship to how many people actually watched the show or how much revenue it generated, meaning a global hit watched by 30 million households triggered the exact same payment as a failure watched by 300,000. The platforms also discovered a cynical financial strategy to avoid these obligations entirely. By removing a title from their library before the 90-day threshold triggered a residual payment, studios could effectively wipe their debts clean. Shows didn't disappear because people stopped watching them, but because keeping them available cost money that the contract allowed the platform to dodge through a calculated deletion. The 2023 SAG-AFTRA strike finally forced a shift in this policy by introducing a new viewership-based bonus structure. While this represents a genuine change in principle, the threshold required to actually see that money is incredibly high. A show must now reach 20% of a platform's entire subscriber base within its first 90 days, leaving the majority of actors and the majority of content still sitting well below the line. Now that the industry has squeezed the value out of streaming residuals, it is moving toward a new frontier of control. Studios are currently negotiating for perpetual likeness rights through digital replica clauses, which would allow them to scan an actor's face and record their voice for a one-time fee. This data could then be deployed indefinitely across future projects the actor never even appears in, following the same logic of every contract that came before it. Pay for the moment, but own the asset forever. From the loopholes that drained Shirley Temple's trust fund to the $27 check sent to Kimiko, the underlying mechanism has remained the same. Extract maximum value at the peak of a performer's career. Structure the contract to limit any long-term liability. Repeat. The most damning fact is that these contracts didn't fail the performers they were meant to protect. They worked exactly as they were written. The system isn't broken. It is performing precisely as it was designed. The show secures its legacy while the platform builds a massive library. Yet the actor often receives a residual check so small that the postage costs more than the payment itself. If you value this forensic investigation into the power dynamics of the industry, explore our full archive of research below. Join us by subscribing to stay informed as we uncover the hidden mechanics of the studio system.